There are a few consoles that instantly fire you up into the upper echelons of retro game collecting as soon as you buy them. Stuff like the Atari Jaguar, the infamous Virtual Boy, and Sega's own 32X add-on. It's a console that is often disregarded at face value. Many people don't look further into the machine in its turbulent history. So I'm keeping up my personal tradition of backing some of the unpopular consoles. And let's be honest, the 32X definitely falls into that category.
It's a little known fact, but the Sega 32X was actually originally conceived as a machine that was meant to combat the Atari Jaguar. I think it was 1994, a guy called Nakayama at Sega pointed to that and said that's going to be the future, that obviously being the Jaguar, which might have been a wee bit misguided, but effectively so Sega decided that this was going to be the future and we were going to have to fight this. So they prepared the 32X as a response.
They were both pretty big flops, but the 32X did come off better, having sold some 665,000 units by the end of 1994. A kinda budget 32-bit console to corner the market for the sort of more budget consoles, with the Saturn going up against the PlayStation, N64 and 3DO, whereas the 32X was more competing with the Jaguar, CD32 or the CDI. The cost of the console was $159.99
in America,
but then somehow worked out to be $169.99 here in the UK, even though our currency's worth more, and then it was 16,800 yen in Japan. So head of Sega Nakayama commissioned the 32X to exist. I think after that there was some sort of miscommunications between the Americans and the Japanese, and the Americans pretty much just made this on their own. It obviously transformed into the Sega 32X, which was kind of taking the sort of add-on thing a bit too far. The Mega CD did exist by this point, and as far as I'm aware, the Genesis Mega Drive, or whatever you want to call it, plus Mega CD plus 32X combo is the most amount of proper hardware add-ons that you can get on one console. Although I'm not sure how good a record that really is. It's not something you probably want to boast about, let's put it like that. Fact is, I'm not going to put it to you guys any other way, but straight. Normally I launch into a big discussion about the history of the console and then start getting ready to show you guys some games for the second part, but honestly there really isn't too much to talk about apart from what I've already said. And the fact is, I don't really want to show you guys games because I don't actually have very many. I could rather do them in separate reviews. You know, I'm not bringing anything new to the Sega 32X table. I'm a guy that bought the machine because it's pretty infamous and, you know, not for the kick-ass games it offers. Its games library is actually smaller than the Atari Jaguars, and that kind of says something. I think European-wise it's about 30 or so games, and then there's a few crossover ones as well with the CD. So if you happen to have the big three like I now do, then you can play games like Corpse Killer or Night Trap with better FMV. You can decide whether or not that's actually a good thing.
But let's not beat around the bush or anything. The Sega 32X has got a lot of power. Despite what a lot of people say, it is a massive step up for the Mega Drive in general. Looking at the stats, I mean, two 23 MHz processors, that's quite impressive for the time, considering the PS1 had one processor at 33 MHz. And it can render up to 50,000 polygons, which, when you kind of consider that it's being tied down in some ways by the Mega Drive's lack of power compared to itself, that's pretty impressive, really. And, you know, looking at the graphics, they are definitely a step up from the Mega Drive. I know this is a pretty corny advert, and even though this is actually a UK advert, not an American one, but it still really shows the power of the 32X and what it's actually capable of doing and why you should get it. As you can see from these two pieces of footage, there's a huge difference. If any more evidence was needed that this was a step up, this is it. Ultimately, of course, this is one game, and I know that people will point out towards like Doom and the comparison between the Super Nintendo and the 32X version, where the 32X version was windowed and the Super NES version, whilst kind of blockier, wasn't. And also the Super NES version had better music, yes, So it kind of still doesn't really emphasize how much of a difference the 32X makes in terms of how valuable it is, I suppose. It's pretty tough to kind of find that answer. Despite the obvious graphical update, can I recommend getting a Sega 32X? Well, as far as I can go in this country, no. Unless you're a big Sega fan, that is. Because if you're not a big Sega fan, then the £100+ that you'll be paying for the machine really won't make it worthwhile. There's not a huge library of games, about 30 or so. It makes it kind of okay to collect, but some of them, again, here in Europe are like up to £1,000. Not exactly cheap, so unless you're up for remortgaging your house to buy a crappy £1,000 game for your 32X, you probably won't be interested if you're a completionist. So that leaves it to people who are kind of general collectors or Sega fans. Expect reviews of some of the games that you're seeing on screen right now in the next few weeks or so, or next couple of episodes of the Retro Rip thing. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, like, etc. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks very much for watching.